Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about how to make a customized spending tracker using Excel. The nice thing about making a customized piece of spending software is that you could set it up any way you want to be able to make the best judgment you can when it comes to how you're spending your money. A lot of people talk about how to build budgets, but it's difficult to build a budget if you don't know how much you really spend. So that way you can determine whether or not your budget is realistic. So what I'm going to talk about here is step by step how to build something very similar to the Excel presentation that I have up in front of you for tracking your expenses. So let's start by first setting up our sheet. At the top, of course, I always put whatever I'm working with and a period of time. And this is really important because you may come back and use this or keep it month to month. And when you do that, you'll want to go ahead and adjust it based on the period of time. And you may want to track like what you're doing. So over multiple months, you could see whether or not you're saving more or less. This shouldn't take very long to build, but in building it out, I am going to create a summary at the top of my file so I could keep track of various categories, because sometimes it helps to also see not just what you're doing spending, but also what you're doing in each category. So when you go to budget, you can budget allotted amounts for those categories. So for example, I might want to have a category for living expenses, one for food, one for utilities if I want to keep those separate from living, or some people like to say utilities, phone, TV, since there's so many streaming services. If you have a pet, you might want a summary of expenses for your pet, one for your automobiles, if you're thinking about, gas, maintenance, payments. Maybe it's also your apparel and entertainment. Some people might want to actually make a separate category of expenses for the food they eat when they're out versus the food they eat when they're going to the grocery store and buying in. And then of course, no matter how many categories you have, I'll go ahead and put, just some borders around it so I can keep it good and organized. So it's a little cleaner. Okay, so next I want to make a tracking for the actual detail of expenses that I'm going to incur on a daily basis. It is a really good idea when you're building your schedule that you think about the type of information you want in it and how you could make it in a way that is easy for you to maintain it on a daily basis. Because if you don't end up updating it daily, you'll lose track of your spending. So for example, I like to include date, brief description, and then of course the categories that I've listed up here. I'll want to go ahead and mark the category I'm spending in down here so that I can use that to create my subtotals, the amount, and then my monthly and annual expense. You'll also want to just go ahead and adjust your columns based on what you're doing. So here I am doing date. So if I go ahead and select date, it will just help me keep track of my dates better. My description's text, we're going to do drop downs. For my amount, I'll probably go ahead and just do accounting with limited decimals. And then we'll talk about monthly annual spend in a minute, but you could really add as many columns as you want based on the type of information you want to maintain. Okay, so next let's go ahead and think about categories. So let's assume it's the 1st of September and I had breakfast at the local mart. So breakfast, local mart, and my breakfast was $7. So if I put 7 in there, it should nicely update for me, which is great. And then I want to be able to put it in categories. So as I select the categories, my subtotals up top fill out and I can kind of see what I'm actually spending in each of these areas on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. Okay, to make a category, I'm going to go to data. And then over here, you'll have some data tools. What you're looking for is your data validation. So if you go to data validation, you can then allow to click for list. So select list, and then you're looking for your source. So your source is going to be this list you make up here, which you can change at any time. So when done, you just hit enter. And then what's going to happen is all of the categories that we've stuck up above will end up showing up in that list. And so if we're looking at food, we can select food and it will go there. The nice thing about this is if I decide to add, so let's say I decide to insert a row, go to home, insert row, and I add here gym membership, gym or health, right? Then when I come back to my categories, if you look, it will automatically add gym or health because I put it between. So we'll add it to it, which is great. Then all I have to do is once I've done all of this, I can copy and paste all of my information going down and adjust it as I move forward. So if I go forward, you can backspace it, but the idea is your categories are here. You have our date, and then we have our amount. So now if I backspace it, I can fill it all the way down and come up with, usually I like to put a subtotal at the bottom as well. So if I'm doing a chart, I might at the subtotal, tie out subtotal, and then of course add all of my data up from top to bottom. And if you want to make it a chart where you're inputting, you can again just use your grid lines. I like to keep everything else clean. And again, this is customizable. A lot of the apps that are out there, they're great for spending, keeping track of spending when you're on the go. The only problem is a lot of times they ask to connect to things like your credit card or your bank account, Venmo and PayPal, where here you can keep things separate. That is another idea for categories. You could even insert a row and put something like Venmo and PayPal if you're just trying to track expenses more on what card you utilize those expenses versus actually the categories that you're spending them in. Okay, so the last piece of this is once I input a couple of data points. So let's assume again, I have lunch on this day and maybe I go, to the local dining hall. All food, if you click it, it will put it in the category and I have $10. And then let's assume on 9/5, I go out with some friends, so we go to the movies. And I'm going to put it in my apparel and entertainment. I'll just click on apparel and entertainment. Maybe it's $20. I'll put that there. And then let's assume I also want to put my rent. Maybe my rent's due on the 6th of the month. So I put my rent in here, and that's part of my living expenses. And maybe my rent is $800 a month. That's where I also put, do you see I have this monthly annual expense? You can use this for whatever you want, but a lot of times we have expenses that cover, you pay them one time for the whole month, or you might incur them once for the entire year. And it's always a nice idea to maybe keep those, they're still embedded in your total spending, but to actually keep track of those will help you because as you're looking at your budget over time, if in one of these tracking periods you have an annual expense, you're not going to want to include that in your projected budget on a monthly basis. You're going to actually want to divide it by 12 and then incur that over the life of or the year for which you're tracking your budget. So here I'm going to put monthly, and then of course if it's not applicable, it's not applicable. But later on, if you wanted to build a pivot table or do another summary, you could add these in as well to keep track. So then up here, what I want to do is I want to be able to pull all this data coming out of this table into my summary so I could see how I'm spending. So next I'm going to build my sum if range. So what it's going to say is that I'm going to sum up certain information to the extent it's been labeled living expenses. So I start with the range that I want to sum. So equals sum if parenthetical. And what I want to base my summing off of is my categories. So I'll go to the end of my categories. And then my criteria is that it equals what is included on this row for my summaries. And then what I'm going to be summing, the values I'm going to be summing, is also going to match up that same range. You want to make sure that both ranges, the sum ranges and the criteria you're looking for, are the same from a numerical standpoint. They're just going to be different columns. If I close that up, the whole idea is it's going to look into the below graph, and anywhere I have living expenses marked, it's going to add them all together and put them in on one row. So if I want to carry this down, I can. I want to be careful though. I want to keep my range exactly the same. So if I come into C17, you could do the dollar signs means as I move my calculation down, my values aren't going to change. You can also just go ahead and type little dollar signs in and it will do the same thing. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste down. So the whole idea is that my food, it's automatically adding up. So if you look, I have 7 and 10 and it's giving me 17. And then for apparel, it's pulling through my $20. And then what I would do on the bottom is if you've decided you're getting down to like row 27, go ahead and insert new rows above line 28. So I'd recommend leaving line 28 kind of always blank or that bottom line of your graph, because if you insert one row with one row left, it will ensure that your calculations always adjust. So if you look here, look, Now my calculation is pulling up my entire grid and it brings it down to 31. So the key is to always kind of like, and if you have to write it, you could say like leave blank. And then that way, as you insert rows, you could easily just highlight that row, insert as many as you want, come up to insert. You can just hit the insert. And so when those rows populate down, again, as they're populating down, all your formatting should go ahead and update. And then of course, all your auto sums will also update based on those new rows, same as above. So hopefully developing a personalized spending tracker like this will help you be able to easily track your spending, whether you're doing it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, so you can build a better idea of how you spend and where you spend your money, so you can design budgets going forward, and that this is customized to exactly the way you need it from a look and a feel standpoint.